Because years of the free market mantra, the notion that growth and profit symbolize all human happiness, and years of unchallenged liberal left propaganda, the idea that tradition and national identity are outmoded and irrelevant to life today, all of these things are jointly responsible for the sterility that we encounter in our everyday lives. I believe that we have become a mass, a sort of herd of consumers, bleeping our way through supermarket checkouts and hunched in front of plasma screen TVs or computer terminals, a gigantic human milking machine for local and national government. We inhabit, Mr. Chairman, a strange technology-dominated twilight Britain, if I can put it like that, where bland politicians and a bland managerial class run our lives. And yet, despite the technology that we have, and the way that our TV scientists are able to provide us in half-hour slots with the answers to the universe, we seem to be, as a country, increasingly uncouth and idiotic and unintelligent. Present company accepted. Now, I don't usually agree with Andrew Marr of the BBC, but in his series on modern Britain, he did coin a phrase which summed up the nature of our society today. And he described our post-imperial, post-industrial, you might even say post-society society, as existing in an oozing mass of materialism. And it's the lava flow of consumerism and cultural anaesthetization which we have experienced that has created a new type of non-traditional society. The majority of people, I feel, if ever they were interested in politics at all, appear to have turned their backs on politics and the public world. And I doubt that this is much to do, as Andrew Neil recently argued in a TV programme, that the public schools have triumphed over the inferior state schools, although there's some truth in what Andrew Neil says. But I believe that the problem with this retreat by ordinary people from politics and public duty and so on is because people feel that they simply cannot influence what is happening to them. So they would rather retreat behind their front doors, as I suppose we all would, worrying about their own lives or who will win the Strictly Come Dancing contest. We've become atomized and private, and the idea of volunteering for something or for joining a cause or political party has declined, especially among the young, although, as I've said, it's good to see so many young people here, so perhaps I'm not entirely right on that. But there is certainly a worrying retreat by ordinary people from the public world, from things that they could do to change their own lives. But people, of course, are worried about everything. They're worried about their jobs, they're worried about their finances, and really Britain is full of unhappy people who don't really believe in very much, or more accurately, are given little to believe in. And they feel that if they put their heads above the parapet, they might render themselves unemployable, not fitting into the human resources officer's criteria for what makes a person a risk-free, controllable employee. Corporations and companies of today require an easy-to-manage workforce that doesn't think or act to any great degree. And woe betide you if you exhibit the dangerous tendency of being a right-winger. You probably won't get a job at all, although I know you will get jobs. It is now the case, ladies and gentlemen, that private companies have become infected with the politically correct mentality which we thought only ever existed in deranged left-wing Labour councils. And today companies have not just adopted the pseudo-sociological control mechanisms of HR, but a new concept called CR, which is corporate responsibility. And in other words, it's a company doctrine that requires you to celebrate the all-pervasive creed of diversity, or in other words, the forced fragmentation of established British identity, and of course to embrace gay rights and equality and all the rest of it. And several British companies now, in their company reports, they proudly state that their employees receive compulsory online diversity training, and that even supplier companies are investigated to check whether they subscribe to the same business values, i.e. whether they're as politically correct as their own company identity. So despite our supposedly liberal society, actually individualism has never been so repressed. In Britain today, the smart suit has died a death. Briefcase has been replaced by the rucksack, even for city commuters. And the tie, which I'm wearing here, is regarded. I don't normally wear a tie. Actually, I know that you're not. I know that before you jump on me, I know that you're not wearing ties. It's the weekend. But I'm talking about generally that the tie is regarded as a symbol of being slightly repressed and old-fashioned, and the open-neck shirt is a requirement, especially if you're a Tory leader. Call me Dave. So, but as Charles Moore noted in the Daily, as Charles Moore noted in the Daily Telegraph a few weeks ago, even members of the royal family now feel that they have to say things such as "Okay, guys." Society, I believe, has lost its formality. It's lost its dignity. And to quote a phrase by Derek Turner, the editor of Quarterly Review, there is, I quote, a modern cult of casualness. The military bearing, which the police used to have, has disappeared, for example. The tall officer in blue on the beat has been replaced by someone wired up with walkie-talkies, with mountain rescue style flak jacket, operating in the world of community policing. Meanwhile, on the 7th of February, the Church of England announced that it was to make baptisms, weddings and other ceremonies less formal. The C of E has been the latest body to fall victim to the notion that people are somehow intimidated by anything formal. And there was even a discussion on Radio 3's breakfast programme. In fact, it used to be called Morning Concert. They've now changed it to breakfast because it's more informal. And the discussion was about whether orchestras were intimidating people by wearing white tails when they performed. And I sort of asked myself, is there no end to this campaign to engender slovenly mediocrity everywhere? Say what you like about America, ladies and gentlemen, their orchestras all appear in white tie and tails. On the 9th of February, the Telegraph reported how the BBC Trust, which is basically a secretive cabal of left-wingers who spend our money, they've decided that Radio 3 is actually too daunting and not light enough, and that it caters only for musical connoisseurs. What they actually mean is they dislike European-based culture. Inevitably, the BBC Trust has concluded that Radio 4 is too white and middle class, despite it actually being basically the Guardian on air. Right? It is quite astonishing how even the BBC Trust finds the Radio 4 to be too reactionary. Well, perhaps they should replace Melvin Bragg and Libby Purvis with Rastafarians. That might enlighten the audience. American or Japanese visitors to these shores, expecting to find an Englishman such as David Niven or George Sanders, are shocked to find a lack of civility and a brutalised public environment. We have a push and shove free-for-all, cities and towns that are dominated by hideous, dehumanising plate glass and chrome buildings. Estuary English has slowly eroded local accents, and the middle and upper class are ashamed to speak the Queen's English. Brian Sewell and Sir Roy Strong and voices like them are absent from our television screens. British television is now the stronghold of swearing chefs, the verbally aggressive, and people who have to end every sentence with mate. Well, in the 1970s, I can remember a very different BBC. The BBC had high-minded drama in a series called Play for Today, and classical music appeared on BBC One in the form of a programme called Sunday Night at the Proms. In 2011, BBC One is a cultural wasteland. Lowest common denominator rubbish. The dystopia of such horrible barbaric places as the so-called school Waterloo Road, the politically correct hospital Holby City, and the truly vile Albert Square, home to those pleasant East Enders. All of these are available in high definition, and they may win television awards, but they represent the death of civilized England. So here we have it. We have politicians feathering their own nests or duck houses. We have corporations happy to ditch British employees in favour of relocating to Poland or China. We have private sector companies with Puritan managements and politically correct HR officers. And we have social workerish police who look as though they are patrolling Snowdonia or the Cairngorms. And a country dominated by shopping malls and superstores, boarded up high streets, and concrete slabs for city centres. And I haven't even mentioned the EU. So something there in the speech which we must thank the Conservatives for. All of those things have happened during Conservative governments, notwithstanding the existence of the Conservative Party. So the question is, what are we going to do about these problems, this seemingly irreversible grunge, environmental degradation, and the demoralisation that exists in Britain today? Now, I believe that we as traditionalists and as small c Conservatives can partially retrieve the situation. Now, I mentioned earlier how people have tended to retreat from politics, to say, oh, this doesn't affect me, I can't do anything about it, I'm too worried about my own problems. Despite having talked about how private people have now become, disengaged they've become, there are many instances actually of ordinary people fighting back and winning against the forces of uniformity and against bland commercialisation and environmental destruction. And I have to say to you that, to give you hope, that there are 1,000 places left in England and Great Britain where rooted, normal, national and local identity have survived and continue to thrive. And there are countless groups too, such as the Traditional Britain Group, which observe customs and maintain the old ways of life and keep all the good things that we know alive. The mainstream media is not interested in the Newent Onion Festival or the Rye or Lewis bonfire societies and their torchlit parades through 17th century streets, or the pageant of English music which takes place, no thanks to the Arts Council of England, each May in Dorchester. It is as if England has retreated to the green belt and to the countryside. And despite the best efforts of local authority nitpickers and the urban-minded planners and the Black Environment Network, which believes in imposing multiculturalism on Kentish yeomen and Scottish crofters, we have managed to keep some of the remnant characteristics of the country we knew and loved. Now, I've been involved in politics for a very long time, and with Gregory I have marched on the countryside marches through London and Edinburgh. I've marched against the Nice Treaty, and I have